Hi guys, are you interested in answering a question for social media?
Cool.
You want to finish your cookie first? Chew, swallow. What's your name?
Gatsby.
Gatsby.
Yep.
Nice to meet you, like Great Gatsby.
Yep.
So the question is, what $50 billion crime was recently featured on The Daily Show?
$50 billion crime. Oh my goodness.
Do you watch The Daily Show?
I used to a lot more than I do now.
Well, it's been a couple months, so I don't know how, when you fell off, but you may have seen the segment.
$50 billion crime. I feel like you don't hear about those every day, so you would think it would stick out, but I don't know. Nothing's coming to mind.
It's wage theft. Do you know what wage theft is?
Yes, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so Trevor Noah featured it on The Daily Show, but he actually only used $15 billion, which is the estimated amount that workers lose every year just in minimum wage violations.
Yep.
But $50 billion is the estimated total for all forms of wage theft. Do you happen to know what wage theft is?
Yes, I do.
Would you like to define it for the audience?
Yeah, wage theft is, if I'm not mistaken, can take form in several different ways. Anytime an employer is extracting any sort of value outside of what they are compensating for you, as a very broad definition, that could be considered wage theft. So if a common way it takes place is overtime, unpaid overtime specifically. So, you work 40 hours, but you work those extra 5, but you don't get paid those extra 5, wage theft. And that happens all the time. So,
yeah, you sound very informed.
yes, I like to think of myself as informed.
What do you do for a living? Can I ask?
Just computer science.
You just like to be a good informed citizen.
I like to keep a.
Yeah, but you're spot on. So my name's Catherine, and I actually experienced wage theft at a restaurant here in Philly last summer. And so what it looked like for me was payday coming around and my employer literally not having my check.
Wow.
But also my employer not giving me a pay stub and not paying taxes on my behalf. And,
yep.
I had to expose my employer on TikTok in order to get myself and everyone else he had stolen from at my employment location paid. And turns out this is something that he does often, and also turns out that it's a frequent occurrence across the country as well. So now I do a lot of work just educating people about wage theft, because the couple right before you that I interviewed had never even heard of it before. And I find that to be the case with a lot of people that I interview. And I didn't really know what it was until it happened to me either. So
yeah, and I would say the only reason, well, maybe not the only reason, but I remember in my very first job as a 16-year-old working, behind the counter at McDonald's, my coworkers complaining of unpaid overtime. And at the time I knew that it was wrong and something was going to be done about it, but I definitely didn't know it was that big of a problem.
So did you ever figure out what happened to your coworkers' unpaid overtime?
I believe they got paid it, just back pay.
Yeah.
But I'm not certain. That was a really long time ago.
I was just curious.
Yeah. I do know a lot of the time it just goes unaddressed, be it filed on the back burner and just never addressed, or just whatever happens.
Yeah. I mean, it really even there is the Department of Labor which you can report it to, and you should report it to.
Yes.
But they don't investigate every claim because they're so backed up.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate.
It's part of the strategy of keeping things like them and the IRS underfunded. Is just they can't keep the people on task to really go after where all the money is actually hiding. And then, of course, the people with the money who are actually doing it have all sorts of safety nets and backups to sort of just make it happen. So
and I think, too, it's kind of like speeding, right? That 9 times out of 10, you're not going to get caught for speeding.
Yep.
So you're not too incentivized to, not speed, right? I know I'm a terrible speeder, but that's not a crime.
And fees are only a penalty for the poor. You can't take money away from
If you have the money to pay the fine, then
that's not a penalty.
What is it? It doesn't deter you.
That becomes cost of operating business.
Yeah. Did you know that actually New York just created a unit within their district attorney's office to prosecute wage theft?
Yes, actually, I did hear that. New York State, right? Or was it New York
Yeah,
City?
New York State. Yeah. And actually, it's been a felony in DC if you commit wage theft above $1,500 since like 2014.
Oh wow,
which I thought was like fascinating. Yeah. And then there's a place in California, and blanking on where, but they recently enacted a law that, like, if you get a certain amount of violations for wage theft, you get your like food license revoked, which is
those are actual penalties. Those are the consequences that become a barrier to reoffending.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I mean, don't get me wrong. Like in DC, it's not a massive amount of jail time. It's like 30 to 90 days.
Yeah.
But I don't know like what their kind of repeat offender laws are and how that might, you get caught once and then maybe you go to jail for 30 days or something like that. But then you get caught a second time. Like, what does that then mean? You know what I mean? Are you considered a repeat offender? Could you go to jail for 6 months? I don't know.
Yeah, I believe it's probably a slow rising tide. I would like to think that this is just the beginning of it, and as sort of this becomes more and more conscious as people like you spread awareness. The penalties for repeat offenders will hopefully go up. So that's something.
Repeat offenders for things like wage theft, not for everything.
Yeah, not criminal necessarily all criminal activity, but repeat wage theft. Because it's one of those things that if you do it over here and your restaurant gets closed down, you can go across the street, open up a new business, hire new people, and then just do it again.
Exactly, and that's like one thing that I found out about my employer when I exposed him on TikTok was that he had. Not only did he have 3 locations out in the suburbs where he often commits wage theft, but he had locations elsewhere in the city that had been shut down, but wage theft happened there too, as well as like other violations. But wage theft is a big one, and it was just kind of like, oh, so this is his MO. Like he opens up a shop, unsuspecting people walk in looking for a job, trying to earn a good, honest living.
Money,
He hires them, commits wage theft against them. He, doesn't pay other bills and ends up getting shut down. And then he just like goes somewhere else and opens something else.
Yeah, that sounds a lot like the situation that I told you about earlier. I wouldn't be surprised if, and like you said, he was guilty of doing other things. This wage theft often, it's not really usually their only crime, right?
Oh, sure,
It's typically that goes into business fraud, because then you have to start lying on your taxes, and you start relying on your employees' taxes, and then it becomes this whole other thing. So it's not even just I want my money, pay me my money. It's you're not paying your fair share because you're probably stashing some of that money away and not paying taxes.
Oh yeah, so exactly. Wage theft is very much tied to tax fraud. Actually, I recently read a study. Illinois, Minnesota, and Wisconsin collectively lose about $363 million a year in tax revenue just due to wage theft and payroll fraud in the construction industry.
Wow.
And so I was kind of like, okay, if you took that investigation and broadened it, because the US DOL actually says that the construction industry is the second highest low wage, high violation industry.
Makes sense,
The restaurant industry being number 1, and then healthcare being number 3. So it's kind of like, if you expanded it even to just healthcare or restaurant industry, imagine how much larger that number would be in lost tax revenue, right?
And to think about where that tax revenue was supposed to have gone, because roads and infrastructure, schools, everything. Nobody does anything that isn't touched in some way by tax money, and that's stealing from everybody.
And part of me wonders, and this is just I'm not a tax expert, nor am I an expert on the state of PA's budget, etc. But part of me wonders, like, when we have politicians that talk about raising taxes, which is slightly separate from like everyone paying the taxes that they should be paying, right? And because there are like legal loopholes and stuff. But I'm kind of like, if we crack down on things like wage theft and like misclassification and all that, and we would have so much more tax revenue. Would we have to add a tax over here? Would we have to add a tax over there? Again, separate from like closing the loopholes that allow, you know, Warren Buffett's to pay $500 in taxes, but more like, you know, we want to implement like a restaurant tax, you know, like another tax that you pay when you go and buy food, or like a gas tax, you know, that impacts everyone. And so, anyways, that was just like a curiosity that I had. You know what I mean?
I mean, it definitely makes sense. You think people, you know, you see we need money. You know, they think we need tax, but it's kind of like buying a new house instead of, you know, cleaning up your current one. You know, we have all these leaky holes in the house that if we patched, we'd have a pretty nice house. But instead, we look to just, you know, add another room, and then more leaks are going to come in there because it's just going to be another way for someone to avoid paying their taxes. So,
which honestly ends up costing more money anyways, right? Because using your same analogy of a house, it's going to cost you less money to like fix up the house that you currently have versus going out and buying a whole new house, especially with interest rates these days.
Yeah, especially, and that's kind of another kind of an add-on thing with the taxes with corporations, with the inflation the way that it is. It's not the bottom end, you know, that has all the money. It's the upper end that's kind of throwing the whole thing off. So you know, patching these holes where these people who have all this money are, you know, letting it seep out into their own pockets instead of going into the, you know, the common, you know, pool of money that are taxes. It absolutely makes sense that, you know, instead of doing more taxes, kind of fix what we have. Let's, you know, button down the system that we have now.
Exactly. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. And I know my sign fell down, but you can find me on TikTok. Carol, you want to take a picture? Because I have like a long name, so this is my handle.
Catherine Coker?
Catherine Coker, yeah.
Okay, I can remember that.
Yeah. So you can find me on TikTok, and I do a lot of these like citizen interviews, but also just like educating the public about like wage theft overall.
Okay, so. Well, I'm glad you're out here spreading information because it starts from the ground up, and this is the ground floor.
Exactly. Thank you for your time again, and I appreciate your appreciation.
Not a problem.
Have a good rest of your day.
You too.